You probably don't know the name Tim Christian, but there was a time when Tim Christian thought that the whole world would know his name because he felt he was destined for the National Football League. He was star offensive lineman at Ball State in the early 90s, 6'3", 310 pounds, and people expected him to move on to the NFL. But little thing happened on the way to the NFL. He didn't make it, and when it started becoming apparent that he wouldn't make it, his world collapsed. I don't want to say literally and figuratively, but as much as it could collapse, and he still survived because his stature fell, his esteem fell, he fell into depression. His weight became a problem, and but he turned himself around. And I love a story like this because here's a guy who's really, not looking for anything. He's for 20 years he's been a businessman, and he's now a director of facilities for Newsmax. He's married. He has 2 kids, and this is a story that I think everybody needs to hear because we all go through. Maybe not making the NFL isn't what we all go through, but we all go through not getting the job, not getting the girl, not getting the car, not getting something, or losing a family member or a relationship that could propel us into the same situation that Tim was in. And Tim, welcome. Good to talk to you, sir.
Hi, Steve. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's my pleasure. Tell us a little bit about what happened. Well, why didn't you make the NFL? And when it became apparent that you wouldn't, tell us how your problems began to snowball.
Steve, about 22 years ago, 1991 to be exact, I became an NFL prospect, and it was really a culmination of a dream. And I had been a walk-on at Ball State. I had a chip on my shoulder that I addressed by getting a scholarship. And then I focused my attention to going on to the NFL. And I spent 5 years at Ball State, and then in '91 I became a prospect, and I could see that peak, the opportunity right in front of me. It was amazing. And then '92 was my last year. I was a top 30 offensive guard, and had a decent year, and had agents contacting me and contacting my family. The NFL teams were contacting my coaches and even my high school coaches, and then I signed with an agent in late November, and basically was planning to go to the Combine. There was a good chance of being invited to that in Indianapolis in '92. And when that invitation didn't come, it seemed that everything started to change. And my agent was one that had a lot of experience. Charles Mann and Andre Reed and Mel Gray were a couple of his big players. And when he started telling me that teams started to change their mind about, my becoming an NFL football player, I started to become depressed. And by that time, I had fully invested my heart in my dream, not only to become a player, but also to help my parents out, and really burdened myself with the thought of not only becoming a player and realizing a dream, but also help my parents out.
Well, let me just ask you, Tim, if I may, what turned them off to you? What happened? Anything in particular?
When you're at under that microscope, the little things start to can really change the course of the ship, if you will, pretty dramatically. I think I had more of a B or C type season, and played against some really good competition. And I can't put my finger on precisely what it was, but little things I think impacted their decisions. And really, Steve, by January, I was in all-out depression, despair. I felt my world caving around me. And a 22-year-old kid, 2 years invested in the process of being a prospect, and then my agent, who had a lot of experience, who I trusted, was telling me, hey, for some reason, teams are not as attracted to you as before. And to be honest, was really my parents were really hurt by what I was going through, and some tragedy had been in their lives, from suicide to deaths of my brother or my mom's brothers when she was younger. And basically, they feared for me and didn't take anything for granted. And one night, I was talking to my mom, and she said, "You know what? We don't know who you should turn to." And she was in tears, but said the only person that can help you is the Lord. And honestly, I didn't even look that direction. Back then, my idol was football. That's all I wanted. That's all I cared about. And I tell you, Steve, probably a day after that, I was on my knees. I had given up. I was crying on my way to class. You get a picture of a 22-year-old kid, 6'3", 300 pounds, walking to class with a red face and tears streaming down his eyes.
And the fact that you're walking to class didn't help matters, because these are the people that you feel you let down, that you're embarrassed to be around because you feel you should, they all felt you'd be in the NFL and you weren't. So how do you make that transition to faith? Who got you there? How did it happen that you did turn to your faith to sustain you and basically turn your life around?
My mother pleaded with me to turn that direction. In my stubbornness, I did. And I didn't feel a miraculous excitement or anything after I prayed, but I just felt calm. I felt okay with what was happening. And up until that point in my life, I wasn't that mature, And so I got through the draft without any calls. I had the Giants and Bills and Browns interested in me as a rookie free agent. And one by one, they dropped off, and the gates were shutting. I graduated from Ball State, went back home to Kendallville. And then by mid-June, I got that call that I guess I expected, but I was dreading, and that was from my agent saying it's time to hang your cleats up.
So that was the end of football for you. Okay,
Yep.
so no football, definitely not going to make it in the NFL. That dream is where it was fading away, and it was the writing was on the wall. Now the ink was dry, and that was it, and there was no turning back. So what do you do?
I was at a crossroads, and I was afraid that if I didn't do something, that I would revert back to depression. I had, at this point, been to a Bible study. I could feel some energy that I never felt before, and I got real excited about creating a life that I would be excited about. And literally the next day, I started a diet. And this is June of '93. I started a diet. I started reading and learning about a variety of different subjects. Within 8 to 9 weeks, I had lost over 100 pounds.
And that is amazing, because we should tell the folks that while you were playing football, you could sit down at a fast food, at an Arby's, and eat eight sandwiches, eat a dozen donuts in one sitting. And you hear this about, football players or athletes who are huge. You hear about, having a breakfast the size of maybe a week's worth of breakfast that the normal person would eat. So you changed all that.
I literally every aspect of my diet, my work habits, everything, I turned upside down. I did a 180, and I have to be honest. I saw an Arby's commercial this past week, and my mouth was watering. It's been 20 years. Well, you know what? I was on fire to change, and honestly, the experience of the gift of being a pro prospect, the bigger gift, the unimaginable gift of faith. And then turning around and then changing that quickly and then sustaining that over 20 years is what Behaviors of Change is all about.
We're talking to Tim Christian, former college football player who changed his life after his disappointment here on the Steve Malzberg Show. I thought that this was a wonderful story. Let me ask you, how old are your kids?
I have two beautiful daughters. One is 8.5, and the other one's going to be 6 in just about 5 weeks.
Well, God bless you. I guess football's not an option. But do you sit and lament what could have been? I mean, I'm not saying you fall into depression. I'm not saying you're not blessed. You don't believe you're blessed to have your family and doing what you're doing. But do you sit and still look back and say, if the Giants had called, if this team had called, I mean, what it would have been like, what path you would have been led down? Or do you just consider the wonderful family you have something you would not have had if you had taken a different path?
The latter.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, I've had a couple of really huge gifts in my life. One was my faith experience, and then the second is my family. I can't imagine if I would have played football and went a different course. I can't imagine having my family and my life that I have today. I would never change that for anything.
Yeah. And what advice do you give people who might be, like I said at the beginning in your introduction, it's going to be 1 in a million who's thinking they could get into the NFL and they're disappointed, but disappointed in any regard, at any point in their life. They lost their job, as so many millions of Americans have undergone here, and they can't get one to replace it. They have to take a lesser job. They're losing their homes. Maybe they're going through divorce. Whatever the life-changing occurrence is, you suggest that they turn to faith no matter what the faith is, correct?
Every time, Steve. Faith unlocked so many things in my life that I had not focused on before. Once I went to Bible study the first time at Ball State before I graduated and experienced that, and then my brother was a huge influence on me, my brother Al, who passed away 4 years ago. Tremendous, humble spirit, and faith has everything to do with that. Is your core, if that is your rock, you can get through anything. And then, everybody has a story. One of the things I've learned in the book, the authoring part of this whole experience, was everybody has a story, and we all have to be humble enough to recognize that. And then we all have something burning inside our heart, and don't ignore that whatever that is, and just go for it. And if you do experience a hardship, remember those two things, that we all have a story. Reflect on that, and then really dive into your own heart and think about the things that are important, and think about opportunities that may lie ahead of you.
All right. So the book, the book is Behaviors of Change. I should have mentioned that over and over again. Behaviors of Change by Tim Christian, and that is available at bookstores everywhere.
It's on the internet. A variety of channels, Amazon.com, Books a Million,
okay.
BarnesandNoble.com. It's at Chicago suburban bookstores.
Great.
And you can find it at Timothy-Christian.com.
Timothy-Christian.com. Again, the name of it is Behaviors of Change, and this fascinating story is documented in that book. And I thank you very much, Tim, and best of luck with the book and with